Good morning. In two of today's readings, we hear stories of miraculous healings of people suffering from leprosy. These stories, taking place centuries apart, both describe God's healing power. But these are more than just stories about physical healing and the power of God. These stories also both share a message about the significance of how we respond when we receive the grace and love of God, and what it truly means to be made well. So let's explore each of these two stories. In the reading from 2 Kings, we encounter Elisha, an Israelite prophet from the 9th century BCE, who was known for his many miracles. In 2 Kings, there are stories about Elisha multiplying loaves of bread to feed a multitude. Sound familiar? There's a story about him restoring a child to life and blinding the enemies of those who were attacking the Israelites in order to defend his people. In the story we heard today, Elisha is approached by Naaman, the commander of the army of the Arameans, a rival group to Israel. Naaman is a very successful man, but he's plagued by leprosy. Now, it just so happens that the Aramean king whom Naaman serves has a captured Israelite working in his household. And when she hears of Naaman's plight, she suggests that the Israelite prophet Elisha would be able to cure Naaman. In the section of the story that's left out of today's reading, the Aramean king then writes a letter to the king of Israel on behalf of Naaman to request that Elisha cure Naaman. The Aramean king also sends silver and gold as payment. As we heard, when the king of Israel reads the letter, he's pretty suspicious. After all, the Arameans are enemies. But Elisha convinces him to allow Naaman to come for his cure in order to demonstrate the power of the God of Israel. So Naaman makes the journey with his entourage, and before he reaches Elisha sends a messenger to tell Naaman to wash in the Jordan River 7 times in order to be cured. Naaman is a little upset about all of this. First, he feels slighted that Elisha himself hasn't come, and instead he has sent a messenger. And second, Naaman had expected much more from Elisha. If all it takes is a few dips in the river to be cured, Naaman could have done that back at home where there are plenty of rivers. Naaman expected theatrics, the waving of hands, and maybe some special incantations. In fact, Naaman starts to leave in a huff, but his servants convince him to give it a try. They point out that if Elisha had required something difficult, Naaman would have done it. So why not try the simple solution Elisha has offered? Naaman calms down and heads to the Jordan where, just as Elisha has said, his leprosy is cured. At this point in the story, Naaman could have simply returned home. He had gotten what he came for. Instead, Naaman seeks out Elisha and makes this astonishing proclamation. "Now I know that there is no God in all the earth except in Israel." This is quite a statement. Naaman has been transformed not only in his physical body, but in his very soul. The story in 2 Kings goes on to say that Naaman offers a reward to Elisha, which Elisha declines. And so Naaman instead pledges his dedication to the God of Israel, even taking soil from Israel back to his homeland so that he can continue to worship God in his own home. Naaman doesn't just go to Israel, pay some money, get healed of leprosy, and return home. Instead, he responds to the power of God's healing love with gratitude and with a commitment to continue to worship God in a spirit of thanksgiving. Now let's turn to the other healing story that we heard today from Luke's Gospel. Jesus is on his fateful journey to Jerusalem and has entered a village just outside his home region of Galilee as he's heading towards Samaria. The text tells us that 10 lepers approached Jesus, but as was required by Hebrew law, they keep their distance. Lepers were considered unclean according to the law and could only be reincorporated into the community if the appropriate priests examined them and declared that whatever cure they had received was effective. So that's why, after the lepers appeal to Jesus, he simply tells them to go and show themselves to the priests, implying that they would find themselves healed. As soon as the lepers follow Jesus' instruction and begin to head toward the priests, they realize that their leprosy is gone and they have been made clean. Again, this could be the end of the story. The lepers turned to Jesus for help, and he used his power to heal them. Done. If the story were simply about God's healing power, this would be enough. But just as with Naaman's story, there's more to it than that. In the gospel story, as the lepers are heading to the priests and realize they've been made clean, one of them takes the time to return to Jesus and thank him, dropping to Jesus' feet with gratitude. Jesus not only praises this man, a Samaritan at that, for taking the time to express thanks, but Jesus also seems to criticize the other 9 who took the healing for granted. And then Jesus says something rather curious to this Samaritan who is at his feet. Jesus says, "Get up and go on your way. Your faith has made you well." Your faith has made you well? I thought the man had already been made well. The story says that all the lepers had already been made clean. So perhaps Jesus means something more than physical wellness when he makes this statement to the Samaritan. The Samaritan has been cured of his disease, but he only fully becomes well when he expresses gratitude for what has happened. It is not what has happened to the Samaritan that is the point. What is most important is how he responds to it. He does not take his healing for granted, but instead offers thanks both to God and to Jesus, who are the source of this healing. This Samaritan and our Aramean friend Naaman, who responded with gratitude to Elisha, are made more well, more whole, by pausing to give thanks. Lots of things happen to us in life. Some are good, some are really terrible. Sometimes physical ailments can be healed, and sometimes they can't. Our friends from today's readings remind us that how we respond to whatever comes our way is what matters. Our faith and humility and gratitude are what make us whole. These 2 folks came from very different stations in life. One was the commander of an army with the support of a king, and the other was an unnamed man from a marginalized group, and both of them would have been considered outsiders to the people of Israel. Naaman and the Samaritan took the risk of asking for help and expressed their deep gratitude when that help was given. Their true healing occurred when they recognized and acknowledged the powerful love that had been shared with them. Throughout our worship service today, we express many words of thanksgiving to God. Our psalm says, "I will give thanks to the Lord with my whole heart." Both canticles offer thanks and praise for all that God has done. And in just a few minutes, we will say together the general thanksgiving. We repeat these sentiments often in our worship, not only to praise God, but also to help us develop a deeper sense of gratitude in our lives. The kind of gratitude that Naaman and the Samaritan expressed. When we feel and express this gratitude, we are richer for it. We are made more well. We can nurture a sense of gratitude by thanking God and by thanking those around us who provide us with so much, our families and friends, and often even strangers. And we can demonstrate our gratitude for what we have by sharing it with others. We can be guided by all of the main characters in these stories. We can be like Elisha, who welcomed and was willing to heal even an enemy. Like Naaman and the Samaritan, we can gratefully recognize the loving source of life. And like Jesus, we can be generous in giving of ourselves in service to others. In all of these ways, regardless of what comes our way in life, our faith and our gratitude can make us well.